Hey, what is up guys? My name is Oleg, this is Bond. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to do a full review of MWC, not IWC, MWC Flieger Type A watch. I bought this one at the flea market about 5 months ago and I paid 60 Canadian dollars, which is about 45 US dollars. On their website, however, this watch costs around 400 US dollars or 535 Canadian dollars. And in my opinion, that's way too much for this watch. And I don't think you should buy it at that price. And let me tell you why. Let's get into it. MWC Flieger Type A dial. Let's start the review by looking at the dimensions of the case. We have a case diameter of 46 millimeters, a lug-to-lug width of 55 millimeters, a lug width of 24 millimeters, and a thickness of a hair over 13 millimeters. The watch has a good Flieger watch dimensions. 46 millimeters is not going to work for everyone's wrist. To be honest, don't really like watches of this size. I think they look a little bit too oversized on my 7¼ inch wrist, and of course I'll do a wrist shot by the end of this video. But nevertheless, to be more historically accurate, these Flieger watches do have to be large, oversized, because back in World War II they were worn around a thigh of pilots, so that's why they're so large, because they have to be very legible, very easy to tell exactly the time just at one glance. It's not uncommon for these Flieger watches to be 47 millimeters, some of them be 50 millimeters, so this one at 46 is kind of reasonable for a Flieger watch. So this is a Flieger Type A dial, so it only has hours on the outer track and it doesn't have the inner 24-hour track. If it did, then that would be a Flieger Type B dial. To be honest, again, I do prefer the Type B dial. I think it looks better, just my personal preference. On their website, the watch costs around 535 Canadian dollars or about 400 USD, which is way too much in my opinion for a watch like this. Now don't get me wrong, the finishes are pretty good. So we have all brushed finish here, a bit of a bevel by the bezel, really nice finishes. The crown is nice and sharp. This is a diamond crown or an onion style crown. Very easy to operate. Unscrewing it is a joy. Setting the time is also a joy. So first position, that's to change the date. Second position, that's to change the time. And the gears are really good, so just takes a few turns of the crown to really go forward a few hours at a time. Really convenient, and the thread on the crown is really good, so some of that money has gone to developing the crown and perfecting the finishes on the watch. However, the watch, in my opinion, does not dictate that 400 US dollars price tag for two simple reasons. Number one, the movement. So the movement powering this watch is the Seiko NH35 movement. We've seen this movement in so many different watches. We've seen this movement in $50 watches, and this one being 400. I don't know. And to be honest, I wouldn't mind it as much if all that money went into exceptional finishes and exceptional packaging, but it didn't. So the Seiko NH35, pretty accurate movement. This one is running about 35 seconds fast, so it's a bit on the faster side, but still acceptable within the Seiko NH35 parameters. 24 joules, 42 hours of power reserve, beats at 21,600 beats per hour. Reliable movement, doesn't need much servicing at all, and easy enough to service, so it's not going to cost you a fortune to service this movement. However, it's not an expensive movement, so when you pay $400 for a watch, you would expect a bit of a better movement, at least the Miyota 9015. The watch also features a mineral crystal and not a sapphire crystal, which is a big negative in my book. I think if you're spending $400 on a micro brand, it's not really a micro brand. They started in, I think, 1980s at some point. If you're spending $400 on a watch, you would expect to have a sapphire crystal, but it doesn't. It only has a mineral crystal. There's also a whole bunch of controversy about MWC and their military association claims. So MWC, if you go on their website, you can do more research on your own, but basically they're talking about their military ties, their police ties, the fact that they supply watches to police forces, to military forces, and there's a lot of articles about this and a lot of debate online. Of course, there's a lot of debate about everything online, but there are a lot of debate about how true those claims really are. There's also a debate between MWC and CWC. That's another watch company that produced a very similar watch. I think the name of that watch is G10, and there's a whole bunch of controversy who copied who on that watch, and you can do more research on your own. So I did mention some of the negatives, like the lack of sapphire crystal and the movement being on the cheaper side, but there are some positives. Number one is this leather strap. So even though I bought this watch used and clearly it had a life before me, the leather strap is still excellent. It's great, it's tough, it's soft, of course worn in, but it looks like it's gonna last for years to come. I really like this watch stitching, and you can tell it's an original strap to this watch because it has these proprietary screws to hold it in place, so it's not just regular pins holding it in place. In fact, when I bought the watch, one of the screws was missing. Luckily my watchmaker was able to fit a different screw. Yeah, so the strap is a positive. Another positive that I have about the watch is the lume on it. Here's the lume shot for you. Yeah, the lume is great, and that's one of the important things in a Flieger style watch. When you invest in a Flieger, you want that strong lume, and I think this watch delivers in that department. The only downside with that lume, it doesn't really last all that much, so it fades away roughly around halfway through the night. It's just a painted or printed dial, so it's not applied, and again, that's historically accurate, so no complaints about that. But I do have one complaint about the dial, and it's this date window by the 3 o'clock position. It's so out of place. I think it ruins the symmetry of the dial. I wish they didn't have that date at all. It would have looked a lot better. Also, even if they did make a date window, maybe at least make it larger. I think the date window kind of looks ridiculously small there, so really don't like that look. It does look like the watch has a screw down case back. I think the water resistance is 100 meters, which is good enough for a Flieger style watch. No complaints there. But I do have one last complaint, and again, it has to do with the movement. I know I talked about the movement already many times, the small date window, the fact that it's an NH35 for $400. But one last complaint is the fact that the case is 46 millimeters, but you can see how tiny the movement really is. If you open the case back, you can probably see a lot of empty space in this case, which is fine. But again, if you're making such a big watch, and if you're charging $400, $500, maybe charge a little bit more, but fit in the movement that actually fits in this type of a case, and then it will be much better value for money. And here's what the watch looks like on my 7¼ inch wrist. I think it fits all right. I mean, you can't really complain about the size of a Flieger because it is a Flieger watch. It was designed to be large and very legible. The lugs are not really going past my mid-size wrist, so that's fine. I can still wear this watch, but I think I'm gonna sell it. It's a little bit too large for my liking. Alright guys, so that was the full review for the Military Watch Corporation Flieger Type A watch. As I mentioned in the introduction of this video and throughout the review, I don't think this watch is worth the money. There are better Flieger options out there that have more historical relevance and are better value for money. A couple that come to mind, number one is Seiko and number two Stowa. Of course, both very big companies, well known. They are more expensive, but they offer better value for money at the end of the day. If you are on absolute budget, I think Tissel has some really good options at around $220 with a high beat movement and the sapphire crystal. In fact, I think I'm gonna sell this watch and buy myself a Tissel, unless you guys have other suggestions for me to look into in terms of Flieger watches, because I do want to have at least one Flieger in my collection, but this one ain't it. I appreciate you watching this video until the end. Please leave a comment, let me know what you think about this Flieger and what you think about the MWC as a company overall. By the way, today on my wrist I'm wearing my Baume & Mercier chronograph that I bought for my birthday. I finally got it back from a watchmaker. The chronograph function is working properly, so I will do a review of it very soon. Also, in the description of this video there is a secret link. Check it out if you're interested. Thanks for watching, hope you had fun, and I'll see you guys next time.